Welcome to this special interview with Chasing Dissent and Heidi Briones. Have I mispronounced your name?
Yeah, that's totally fine. Briones. Yeah.
Right, cool.
You got it. Yeah.
So welcome, Heidi. Tell us a little bit about
Thanks
yourself.
for having me. Yeah, sure. I'm a writer, business owner. I work in tech. That kind of stuff is kind of boring. But the more exciting stuff is I ran for office as a Democrat in 2020. And since then I've, left the party for sure. And then, left the left and, had a journey throughout that time. I'm a married lesbian. I've been married for almost 6 years. And I'm pretty, I don't know, just disgusted by the way that the left has, bastardized, the LGBTQ plus I, whatever the heck movement, in my name and, me and my wife's name and other people that I know and love. And so that gets me a little bit of attention on X and Twitter. And I also write on HeidiBriones.com, which is my Substack, and write mostly on liberty topics. I consider myself somewhat of a moderate libertarian at this point. And yeah, I'm excited to chat about whatever you like.
That's pretty cool. Well, let's start then at kind of where you started with your introduction there, which is when you ran for office as a Democrat.
Yeah.
So I think you kind of brought up in a left-leaning household. The Democrats were always the happy party. They're the ones that were going to support everyone, and that.
Yeah.
And then you decided you were going to run for office. Was there a particular reason that made you want to do that?
Yeah, actually, I was a volunteer and supporter of Andrew Yang's long shot campaign for president in 2020. And he was kind of a, interesting character. I got to meet him, and, I liked the Yang Gang is what we were called. And we kind of, had a little movement going, didn't really go anywhere. Sadly, he dropped out in February of 2020. And then there was just so much momentum at that very point in time. And I'm very big on catching the momentum in my life when the timing just seems exactly right. I feel like you have to jump on it. And I felt like I had enough support to make a go at it at least. And, it was also a long shot campaign, but I jumped in then, and then it was, COVID, the peak of COVID, March, April, May is when I ran. So I had to do most things online, which is why I got a pretty quick online presence. I had to learn Twitter pretty quickly and figure out how to raise money and all that fun stuff. But yeah, it really stemmed from being inspired by, Andrew Yang kind of jumping in there and kind of, having some camaraderie and some support behind me.
Cool. So I take it you didn't get elected. So the whole process was a kind of learning experience for you. And was there anything that came up during that would think that maybe started to turn you against the left, or was it later on that you decided to go down that route?
Well, I mean, I've always been more independent. I mean, I grew up in California, and in California, you can be registered as declined to state. So I was mostly registered as declined to state, and that means I could vote in whatever primary I wanted to. And I've always been a bit more, just independent minded. So I'm always a little bit skeptical, but I never saw myself as a Republican, certainly not, or a conservative exactly. So during the campaign, certainly there were some things that came up that were odd. Just, people pushing me to have certain positions like that I wasn't comfortable with. Like, I'm very anti-war, for example, and there is definitely like a neoliberal strain of the Democratic Party that I'm not comfortable with. In that sense, I've sort of side more with, what people would consider leftists or libertarians, anybody that's anti-war. So that's always like a concern. And, I don't feel super comfortable with the elitism in the Democratic Party, but I think what really pushed me over the edge, at least one of the things, was the authoritarianism that I saw during COVID and things that were being forced on people and businesses in the Portland area. That was one major thing. Seeing the riots and destruction during the Summer of Love in Portland, seeing, a once beautiful city destroyed by what I consider, radical leftists, and also the radical transgender, movement, where it's forcing, women to have males in their same-sex spaces. So that's highly concerning. And I didn't feel like I had a home on the left on that issue at all. So combination of those factors, and then also not feeling safe anymore in my city, or just personally feeling very safe and wanting to get a firearm and going to get it and realizing it's not as easy as, people make it seem. And there's, a lot of steps to go do it. And I felt like, hey, the Second Amendment thing's actually pretty cool. Probably should support that. So not really something the Democrats, tend to side with on that either. So all the signs were just pointing to, what, this party's not for me anymore. This ideology isn't for me anymore. I'm really more of a libertarian, and the Democrats just seemed more libertarian up until that point to me. Than the right did. And then I feel like there's been a flipping. The right in the US has become more populist, less socially conservative, less, influenced in that way, and more libertarian than they have been before. So I sort of started siding with them on some issues. And that led me here.
So I kind of think of myself as a bit libertarian, but in my particular case, I like to think that I'm really not a fan of big government at all, regardless of what side it seems to come from. And
right.
I think, as far as the UK goes, and probably America as well, I think we need some drastic change in the way that we govern. Do you agree with that? Does that fall into your libertarian views, or do you think that I'm maybe going a bit far?
No, I mean, I'd probably go farther. I'm what's called a minarchist, essentially, is what
right. Okay. Yeah.
So as little government as humanly possible. Right. I do think we may need certain things, like we need to protect our borders, or we need to have some kind of defense force, things like that, or some basic police force. But I'd like to see it as small as possible, and as much freedom to the individual as possible is where I've sort of landed, because as you mentioned, whether it's the Democrats or the Republicans or anybody else that gets into office, they tend to just do the same things, when it comes down to it, from their own perspective. And they still, have the debt cranking up. They still have inflation going nuts. They still go to war. They still, take away people's rights just depending on what side you fall. It doesn't matter. Like, it's all authoritarianism to me, and it's all bureaucracy and elitism and cronyism. So when you have all of that, I mean, who can support that when it comes down to it? I used to be a good government person, and now I'm like no government, or as very little as possible, and focused on the local, like hyper local government. I think makes the most sense for people. Like, I mean, it'd be cool if there's actually literally like a little government just on your street, and people do that already on their own. They have Neighborhood Watch, or they have little organizations they start, or HOAs or whatever. And it's not like I'm necessarily a fan of HOAs or anything, but if it works for them and they want to do it and they want to put money into it, and they think it's making their community better, and it's something they're voluntarily agreeing to do, then I think that makes a lot more sense than involuntarily being forced to do things that somebody across the country, or, in some dark room decided you should be doing, that has no, just no connection to your actual reality.
I mean, it sounds like we're pretty much aligned, actually, on that basis. So the question is then, and this is the one where I keep falling over, is how do you change a system by being part of that system?
Yeah.
My view seems to be that the only way that we're ever going to change a system is ultimately by some kind of revolution, dare I say that word. What do you think about that?
Yeah, that's certainly, one way to look at it. I think that a lot of anarchists, whether they consider themselves like a left anarchist or, more of like an ANCAP, like a, anarchist on the right, would agree that at some point, like, you have to stand up for yourself. And if it comes to that, and you feel like your, life is being threatened, then it may be the time for civil war, revolution, insurrection, whatever words we want to use. It could come to that. I hope it doesn't. Like, I that's not something that I want to do, or that, I would encourage or anything, but it may have to come to that. And I hope it's a peaceful, sort of, point, but it hasn't been historically. So you either need to, I think, I guess like escape and detach, go like get a homesteading is what they call it here, or go live out, somewhere remote where you're just wholly disconnected and off grid, as they say. That's one way, or move to a country that has whatever the values that you think, suit you the best. If you think you're not in the right one, that's another option, but I mean, what else can you do? I mean, because if you're not willing to throw up arms, and if you feel like that's not, you don't have the support, then I mean, you have to separate yourself, or get involved in a way that you feel makes sense, or just turn it all off and just focus on yourself. And that's mostly what I encourage people to do when they're feeling like helpless and hopeless. It's like, well, focus on yourself. Like, you have to go and look in the mirror and be like, can I improve myself? And if I improve myself, will I just feel better? Like, in general, like, are you too much in your head and not enough in your body, and not enough, focused on how you can feel better, so that this stuff doesn't, destroy your life? Because in the end, only thing that's going to matter is you and your family and the people that you love, and how, your life is. And don't let somebody in Washington, D.C. or otherwise destroy you in that way.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's all very valid points, and all, it sounds perfect from the point of view, except for, how do you find a country that aligns with your values these days? Because they all seem to be in lockstep. They all seem to be beating to the same tune. And people, I mean, I'm not trying to go down a conspiracy route, but people keep going on about the New World Order and the WEF and all that. Do you think there's some kind of hidden hand, or is there a deep state that's behind everything, that's working away to try and manipulate us into a kind of one world government?
Yeah, I mean, almost certainly that would be the goal, right? I mean, if you think about what would you do with absolute power, well, you would want to expand that power, as much as possible. And if absolute power corrupts absolutely, I mean, well, then, that's where you end up. And we do see supposedly good people get into office, or in places of power, and suddenly become dark. So you have to think, if you are the UN, the WEF, whatever organizations that are focused on globalism, well, why? What is the purpose of them doing that? To have as much influence and, power over the entire earth for some reason, right? So I think that it's just natural that these certain groups would exist. I don't know how organized and coordinated all of it is. I think some is. I think some of it is organized and coordinated, but I don't know, if the head is talking to the tail, or whatever, analogy you want to use. I don't know, how devious, we want to go with it. I think that mostly it comes down to power, money, maybe like, sex and other base impulses at some point too. And if you have all that power, well, wouldn't you want to do whatever you can do with it and have as much fun or whatever? But I mean, we can get spiritual if you want, but I believe there are dark forces, working in the world. And some of these people with power are on that side, because when you look at light forces, people tend to be more humble and don't seek out, that kind of power. You look at like, Mother Teresa, or, other figures throughout history that were more humble. They didn't really live these like crazy power seeking lives. They were just looking to, see who they could help. So I do think there's something going on there, but to find a country that suits your values, I would say that, I guess, like, what's the trade-off for you? Like, are you more individualistic? Then maybe you need to live somewhere that's focused on the individual to whatever extent you feel. Are you more collectivist? Some people just are. Some people just feel like they're more collectivist and they feel comfortable with that. And then maybe that's better for you. For example, with me, even though I'm a libertarian, I consider myself an individualist, I actually feel better living in Asia. I spent quite some time living in Asia, and I actually like it a lot, because Asians tend to self-police themselves, is the vibe that I get. There's like a shame, aspect of Asian culture where you just kind of shame people if they're doing something wrong, and you don't need to call the cops for every little thing, because, your grandma's just going to look at you wrong and you're going to be like, I'm done doing that, like that's like enough. And to me, I felt safer and more comfortable in that kind of a collectivist, don't stand out too much environment. And sometimes I feel weird sometimes in America, where it's like everybody's, looking at everybody and looking to see who they can sue or, throw in jail. So that doesn't make me feel too comfortable sometimes. I feel like almost we're more authoritarian and have more of that kind of legal, like law and order aspect than other countries that are safer and actually have less people in prison and less crime than we do. And they don't have as many laws. And how does that work? So that's, you know, people, their culture is policing themselves. So I think if that's an option for you, then you may need to think about that. You may need to think, well, maybe I'm more comfortable in an Eastern type of culture. Or maybe I'm more comfortable in a rural area, or maybe I'm more comfortable in a city. Maybe that's just how I have to live. Maybe I do like that. I think that that's something that people need to look inward for and do what they can to improve their situation.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, that sounds quite reasonable. I spent time in the Far East as well. I lived in Hong Kong for a couple of years, and I've spent quite a lot of time in America, mainly on holidays. Even down to backpacking across it both ways when I was when I was young. On
oh, really? That's a long one. Yeah, I don't think, you know, a lot of Europeans are shocked when they find out how big
I mean,
the country actually is. They're like, what the heck? Yeah.
Well, it took 3.5 days to get from New York to LA on a Trailways bus.
Oh, yeah. It's really expansive. I mean, I taught English and I had students, you know, and they'd be like, Heidi, how can I go visit like the East Coast on like train? And I'm like, shoot, I don't know. Good luck. It's going to take you forever. And they're like, I'm like, this isn't Europe. Like, you can't just go and like jump on a train and get to like, you know, another country. This is going to take you forever. And you probably don't have time with your little, you know, week off or whatever they had. So yeah, it's fun. But this country is so large, but so it's weird. It's very unique.
Yeah. You know? One of the countries that I really quite liked in Europe, and I've spent quite a bit of time in Europe as well, is stayed in France. And we spent about 8 weeks in Sweden during the pandemic, because Sweden, as you know, didn't put any restrictions on anything. So
Sweden's actually pretty libertarian.
Yeah, we
in a lot of ways.
We didn't have anything that would allow us to go to things in France. So we went up to Sweden and we could eat in restaurants, we could have meals together, we could go
nice.
We could go to the movies. We could go into coffee shops and sit down and have fika, which is coffee and a pastry. Obviously, you can see that I've been hitting the pastries too hard. But apart from that,
hey,
the Swedish
lately, you know.
Swedish themselves are pretty individualistic as well, because they're quite standoffish. In fact, they're a bit like Scots. You know, we're quite slow to take people under our, you know, into our, what would you call it, our personal space or our circle of trust. And the Swedes are quite like that as well. They're quite independent. They look after themselves, but they seem to have a strong ethos as to what's right and what's wrong. And I like that about Sweden. I think Sweden has its own issues, but mostly they're in the cities because of the massive amount of immigration they took. And although I believe they've completely stopped that now, they're not taking anyone. So, moving on, what about your little foray with people of the LGBT community? They don't seem to particularly like you. Is there a reason for that?
I mean, yeah, I think, you know, things that I have mentioned that I mean, the whole LGBTQIA plus is essentially, you know, what I consider to be a Marxist mafia that is pushing, you know, a radical trans agenda, which is essentially anti-woman, anti-lesbian, you know, anti-freedom and same-sex, you know, rights. So I think that, I guess they wouldn't like me. I mean, they're just essentially, you know, leftists playing the oppression Olympics. And now that I'm not playing with them anymore, they don't like me. And that's just how they work. They don't care if you're gay, black, white, you know, purple or orange. I mean, if you disagree with them, then, you know, they don't like you, and it doesn't really matter. Your identity is just something that they use to push, you know, this whole narrative of the oppressors versus the oppressed. But as soon as you become not oppressed enough anymore, which happened with same-sex marriage rights, suddenly you're no longer a part of that. You can easily become the oppressor. You know, in one moment, the second you don't support trans rights, oh well, then you're just an ungrateful gay who doesn't, understand that the left got you to where you are now. And it's like, well, where we are now is kind of worse. I mean, besides like the same-sex marriage, I mean, other than that, it's actually worse than where we were before. We had a lot of rights because, for a lot of reasons, but because you're pushing things on the mainstream and on traditional people and families and conservatives that they don't like or want. And I don't agree with that, because that's none of my business with how they want to live their life. And I want it to stay none of their business how I live my life. And if you're pushing it on them and their kids, they're going to start getting upset for good reason. And I don't agree with that. I think that that makes everybody look bad. And so then they don't like me.
So does part of this then come back to us? And when I say us, I mean the people that are basically sitting in the middle. The ones that they just want to get on with their life. You do what you want to do. I'll do what I want to do. I might not agree with it. I might agree with it. It doesn't really matter. As long as you're not shoving it in my face, I don't care. And as long as I'm not shoving things in other people's faces, live and let live. But the question is, does it come back to us? Because does tolerance make those that you tolerate have contempt for you?
In what sense? I mean, I guess.
Well, if you think about it, the more that you give people, free rein to do things, you'll tolerate certain behaviours in maybe one group that you wouldn't tolerate in another. And then those people start to take advantage of that. They see that they're getting more, they're doing more. And maybe we can see some of these examples. And for instance, when you look at the people that go into supermarkets and help themselves and walk out, it always seems to be black people. So are they trying to use the narrative that you've been talking about? Are they trying to use that to get things for themselves and not be punished for it? And
yeah, I mean, I think that, if you give anybody an inch, they'll take a mile. I mean, that's sort of like basic psychology, right? Is that, if you tell a little kid, you can have one cookie. Okay, suddenly, they want 5 cookies. It's just sort of like, well, where does this end? Where's my line? Like everyone's always trying to figure out where their line is and how far they can push it. It's sort of human nature to be like, that's a rule. How can I bend it to my advantage? So, I think that if you allow theft, if you allow, debauchery, if you allow degeneracy on the streets, or, whatever you allow, then people are going to try to push it and see, well, where's my boundary here? So I think that the concept of shame that I mentioned before with Asian cultures is important here. You can't have no shame. You can't just have a shameless society and have it function without insane authoritarianism, to have just like, okay, like, you don't want like, somebody to go into a store and they take something and they walk out and then the cop shoots them. You don't want that either. Like, you don't want like the extreme on either end. It's much better if somebody goes in a store and grabs something for them to be embarrassed and for other people to see them do that, like it would be in Asia, and for them to feel like they've just like dishonored their family's name or something, and like that's like the extreme of it, to where they could get away with it. Like in most parts in Asia, I could get away with that. They wouldn't say anything because it's not part of Asian culture to really call things out so much. It's like very hard for them to do that. So I could probably get away with it, but I wouldn't, because it would be very embarrassing, and like, everybody would know that's the type of person you are. So I think that we've gotten away from social shame, and we've gotten to this point of, like you mentioned, tolerance or acceptance or whatever you want to call it, or pride, the opposite of shame. You can use that too. We have a whole Pride Month now, which has really, I don't know, it's just turned our culture and our society into one that sees shame as this horrible thing. Like, don't slut shame, don't this shame, don't do that shame. And it's like, well, really, maybe we should shame that though. Like, shame is not like the worst thing that could happen to you. Like, I think that it's actually like a good thing. If most people think that's a bad thing, don't do it, then like maybe stop and consider what you're doing. So I think that we do need to get back to some semblance of shame and stop like worrying about if people are going to be offended or their feelings are going to be hurt. It's like, if you're doing something wrong, I don't care if your feelings are hurt, because we need to stop that right where it is and just nip it in the bud so that people don't think that's okay to do.
So do you think this is the end times for Western civilization? Are we slipping into some kind of decadence? Something like affected Berlin in the 30s, before our little chum Adolf came along. do you think that we're going down the wrong route here? And then, of course, the question is, how do you change that, and how do you make sure that we pull ourselves back from the brink?
Sure. I mean, I have an article on my website on the fourth turning. So I actually take a historical. Yeah,
I've read the fourth turning as well.
Right. Yeah. So I have a historical perspective on this, where I actually believe that this is cyclical. So I think that where we're at now, we have these cycles that have been observed, since for a few hundred years now. So it's pretty consistent with modern society that we go through these cycles, and we're in the fourth turning. And then what happens at the end of the fourth turning is some major event, usually a war, depression, revolutions, civil wars. These types of things happen. Some major secular event is what they call it in the book. And then you have a period of optimism, and resurgence of traditional values and patriotism, and and economic prosperity happens as well. So I think that we're just on the brink of that. So when people say this is the end, I mean, they're both right and wrong. I think that, yes, it is the end, and something is about to happen. And that's kind of the feeling we're all getting right now, is like, what's about to happen? Once that thing happens, whatever it is, or those things, or however that works out, and we come out the other side of it, I do think that we will see a resurgence of more tradition, more values as far as family building and those things, just as we saw after World War II, just as like will continue to happen probably for forever. So I personally think it's cyclical, and I don't think humanity is ending or anything. I don't think we're going extinct. I think that's taking it a little bit too far. I do think there are dark forces that would love to see less humans just on Earth in general, because to them it's like less souls, less, so that you see things like abortion being pushed, or have less kids, or those types of things, I think are kind of just dark forces. But it's so easy for humans to turn that around and become positive again, and start, procreating again, start feeling good about the future, and start moving forward. So I think that that's what will happen.
So do you think we're going into the fourth turning, or we're coming out of it?
Oh, we're in the fourth turning.
We're in it?
Yeah, we're definitely in it. We are in crisis mode. We've been since about 2007, 2008 is what some people say, around the economic crisis, around that period. And so we've been in for a minute. They could last 20 to 30 years or so. Yeah. They say historians currently predict around 2030 there'll be a shift into the first turning, but it's hard to say exactly when will happen. It depends on the events that happen. Then there's a rebuilding. There's going to be a rebuilding, because right now it does seem like we're at the bottom. It does seem that we're not doing well.
I'm not going to see another golden age. I don't think I can hang on that long.
Hang on. Stop eating those pastries or whatever it is. Yeah. Hang in there.
No, but if each turning takes, 20 to 30 years. What's a golden age? That's in the third, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, the 2030s, 40s, we should see, some drastic changes. But I mean, hang in there. I mean, it's going to get really dark, and it's going to get really wild for a minute. Yeah.
So in the meantime, do we just kick back on the porch with a shot of JD and watch the world destroy itself, or do we stand up and fight for our rights?
It depends what kind of person you are. I think that whatever you have to do, I think you have to think about your own safety. So I do think that the preppers and those types of people have a really good point. Like you need to be, having food, water, storage, whatever. You need to be ready in case we're not going to have access to our money, in case we don't have access to food, in case you can't get anywhere. That could all happen. I mean, grids can be shut off. There can be cyber attacks. It could be, a cyber thing. So I think you need to be very prepared and very aware. Is important, but and then it depends what kind of person you are. Some people are like, I'm staying here, I'm gonna fight, I'm gonna do what I want to do. Other people are like, let's head for the hills, let's go somewhere rural that like no one's gonna find us, that we won't know what's happening, or maybe something in between. I don't know. Or maybe you stay and you just share your thoughts and you try to leave legacy, or you just stay involved, or maybe that's not good for you. Maybe you need to just shut it off and, go do something that you enjoy, because life is short. So But yeah, I think, it's hard for me to advise anybody on that. It's so individual, but I just think, know that this is coming, know that something is going to happen, and be ready.
Yeah, I think we're pretty much on the same page there, as they say. So you've gone away from the left. Where do you put yourself now? Do you put yourself firmly in the centre? You really don't have a left or right politics. It's down the route of small government. Don't bother me, and I won't bother you. As manage ourselves.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I registered as a libertarian because it suits me the most at this time. I don't know if I'll stay there or not, or if I'll become like more independent, or I certainly don't see myself as a Democrat or Republican. So that, binary is not going to work for me. So it's going to be, something outside that. But I guess I consider myself a moderate libertarian. I'm not super, kind of one way or the other. I really go issue by issue and really try to look at that specific issue and think about it a bit more deeply than what does my team say. I just tend to mostly align with the libertarian, viewpoint on most issues when it comes down to it. But they are the party of principle in the U.S. is what they're called. So really the principles just stay the same. So if you read the principles of the Libertarian Party, you'd be like, I either agree or I disagree. If you agree, then probably maybe a good thing to join, maybe not. But, you know that they're going to stick to those principles. With the Democrats and the Republicans, or the right and the left, that changes with, whatever the times are, right? Like, the right's now suddenly, we're mad about this, we're reacting to this. And the left suddenly like, this is horrible, now we're focused on this. You can't tell what they're going to do. And so that to me is too tribal, too cultish. And I can't get down with that, because I don't know. I can't be like, yeah, this is my team, and then suddenly they start doing something horrible, and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't like that. I'm not associated with that. So I tend to stay away from the tribes and the teams too much, other than, basically saying, hey, I like that, the Libertarian Party has principles at least, so I can support that.
Yep. So what's going to happen in the upcoming elections then?
I personally think that Trump will win in a landslide. If it's Trump-Biden, I think it's going to be quite shocking. I think people will be. You
think Biden can run? Can he run? I mean, the man's he's obviously got dementia.
That's everybody's talking about that right now. And I think that the most likely case is still that Biden will run. I think that's still the most likely case. I mean, it's like, you have to just be like, that's the likely case. Yeah. You can have your other theories, but I just think that's the situation currently. And then the second most likely case, just looking at constitutional law and otherwise, would be Kamala Harris would take over. They invoke the 25th, whatever way, and they somehow get her in, or he resigns and she goes. There's so many different ways that could go down.
They don't really want her. They don't want her to run. I mean, I don't
want her to run, but I mean,
who's going to be the nominee if it's not Biden? I mean, I was listening to Vivek Ramaswamy the other day, and he's banging on about Michelle Obama, and that's a kind of outlier that I'm in favor of. I kind of think they might try something like that.
She doesn't want to do it though. I mean, like that's the thing is like she has zero.
So what?
I mean, she's not going to do it. I mean,
you know what?
That's kind of important. I mean, it's like she won't do it.
The first, when you're dealing with the government, the first indicator that something's going to happen is a strong denial.
I don't know about that. I've been studying politics for a while, and I think the most likely conclusion is just like what is already happening. I mean, and what have people said most recently? And Michelle Obama has always said, I hate being in politics. I hated being in the White House. She has a whole rant that she does in her book about how she can't make toast for her damn self. And she hates that, she's so happy now that she can go downstairs and make a piece of toast without 10 people surrounding her, and that she can open a window and have fresh air come in, because you can't do that when there's Secret Service. And you can't just be free. So she's like literally in heaven now. And basically describes the White House as her own personal prison. So I really don't think she's going to do that no matter what.
Maybe not.
And I think she's just enjoying her life. And so I think Kamala Harris, and then she, maybe pick somebody, else to like fill those. Maybe it's just a stopgap. I don't know. Maybe it's just like, There's lots of theories on that, but I think that right now, Biden v. Trump, Trump landslide, Biden v. Kamala. Kamala actually polls slightly more favorable than Biden, believe it or not, against Trump, because she's so outside of the limelight, really, in the thought right now.
That's frightening, isn't it? Kamala polling.
So that might actually be closer. That might actually be closer because black female, it could just ignite a little bit of spark that people don't have for Biden. I mean, white male versus white male. Suddenly it's a black female versus a white male. That could just ignite enough voter turnout to sway it enough. So that's one thought. But I think right now, the silent majority still exists and is very pro-Trump, and a lot of people will swing back in swing counties, realizing that Biden didn't do a damn thing for them, and their cost of living went up 17%, I think is the latest numbers, and they can't afford to live, and they'll be like, I was better under Trump. That's it. I don't care if I like him. I don't care about anything. I just feel like it was better.
Now, I understand that they've just approved the funding bill for Ukraine, Gaza, and over Taiwan to the tune of 90 billion. 90 billion. Now that's
wait, what? Say that again? I think I missed it.
Congress, I think, has approved the funding bill of $90 billion to Ukraine, Gaza, and Taiwan. It's not 90 each; it's split between the three of them. But that's a Republican Congress just now.
What do you mean? What do you mean, Gaza?
Well, aid to Gaza.
Okay, I mean, aid to Israel is usually what we do.
Well, so, I know, but
if we're funding both sides, it's not surprising. I mean, we tend to do that, so that's not.
Well, yeah.
But
the world's turned on. The world's turned on its head, though, hasn't it? I mean, look, I don't know what your country's like, but we've got people in the streets protesting about the Israeli. Protesting about the Palestinians starting a war with the Israelis, effectively, and it's all pro-Palestinian.
Yeah. Well, I think that's crazy. Not shocking to me, like, at all, because I mean, if everything again goes back to oppressor and oppressed, so they see Israel as the oppressor and Palestine as the oppressed, and that's just it. Like, you can break down the left always on that. If they're an actual leftist, an actual socialist, then that's how they see everything. So it's not shocking to me at all. People will send me stuff like, oh my gosh, can you believe gays for Palestine? And I'm like, yeah, I actually can, because I mean, they're just leftists. Like, they're not thinking in the way that you're thinking. Like, they're not thinking about whether they're hypocrites or not, because their lens is only framed on who's the oppressor and who's the oppressed, and who is like more pro-capitalism, who is and who is not, and how do we have a socialist revolution? How do we not? And like, it's all framed in this framework, this critical framework. And if you don't look at things from a critical theory framework, then you're just going to think this is just stupid. And if you do, you're going to be like, that makes 100% sense. So it's all about the framework that they're working in. And so I think it's interesting. I mean, all of it's very interesting. Taiwan is an interesting one to me. I'm very, fond of Taiwan, and I would actually want to move back there. I lived there for a couple years.
In Taiwan?
Yeah, I love Taiwan. Taiwan is, very special and unique to me. I don't see it as the same as Ukraine or, Gaza in any way, or Palestine in any way, rather. I just see it as a completely unique situation. And the great thing about Taiwan is that it's the only place where real traditional Chinese culture still exists, because Maoism wiped out 90% of it, if not all of it, during the Cultural Revolution, and when Chiang Kai-shek went to Taiwan, he was able to preserve so many different things. They still have the traditional Mandarin characters, still have traditional Chinese characters, still have traditional temples that were destroyed in China. Still have a lot of actual Chinese culture there. And then it's a very cool country, because it's very Western in certain ways, but with the Eastern culture still, and just very amazing, just beautiful, beautiful place that I would hate to see destroyed and go the way of Hong Kong. and other places. Does that mean that I support foreign aid? No, I never support foreign aid. I don't think that that's the right way to go. However, you know, it's tough for me because, you know, I don't want to see anything happen there. And like, I just don't want to see that go down. And the fact that people are talking about it all the time is quite concerning. I personally think China stands more to gain by the looming threat than they do by invasion. I think that that only will harm them in you know, economic ways, which is the main thing they care about. You know, and I don't think that they will come out looking very good or anything if they go in there and start just like massacring like, you know, these like peaceful Taiwanese people. It's not good. So I think they gain a lot from that threat of like people being scared of that happening, and they don't gain very much from actually the action. So I think they put it off as long as possible and try to have a peaceful reunification at some point down the road. That's my personal thought. I could be wrong. I hope I'm not, though. Yeah.
I think Xi plays a long game, even more so than Putin does. The only thing, and he's effectively a dictator as well. He's not going to be ousted. He's put himself in a position where he can continue to be re-elected, and because previously they had limited terms, but he's done away with that as well. And I think, as I said, I think he plays the long game, and I think he's quite happy to sit back. And he doesn't want to really do anything, like you said, with trade that's going to disrupt his Belt and Road Initiative, because he's put a lot of money into, you know, countries like Iran and most of Africa. I mean, they've gone into Africa, and what they've done, instead of, you know, going in and taking the resources as such, they're still doing that. But what they're doing is they're giving something back in return, you know, like they're putting in a railway or something.
Factories, coal, you know, like dirty factories. But, you know, the developing world does need dirty factories, because they need it to be fast and they need power right now. You know, they can't wait around for, you know, this green technology. That's just not gonna work when you need, you know, build up an economy quickly. And China knows that. And I think China's play is to, you know, basically get rid of the petrodollar, like, you know, try to get, you know, the yuan, you know, accepted as a currency for trade in oil. Yeah. I think that that's like a major play they would want to do. I think they have so many different plays that they want to do other than attack Taiwan. I just feel like that's just such a lame one to do. Like, I just think, like, why would you like do that? They're not doing anything to you. It's not like a situation where there's terrorists that attacked you. It's not going to happen. Like, Taiwanese people don't do that stuff. You know, there's not like a border dispute with like Ukraine and Russia where it's like, is Donbass over here? Did you attack me? There's not any, like, there's no like gray area at all there. It would just be like literally them just being a complete bully and just coming in and being like, we're going to take you by force, and that's it. And it would just be, it would be hideous if you know.
I think the only people that would start a war in Taiwan would be the Americans.
How so? How do you think that would
if they decided to go in and start building up a massive military presence? That would be the only way that would drive things that direction.
Why would they do that though? Because like, why?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, you tell me. You're the American, but the Americans.
I don't think that they would. I don't think the U.S. would want to do that, because the U.S. and China are basically the same thing. I mean, we're so tied to each other economically and otherwise, and debt and all these things that we have going on. And, you know, China owns so much of our property, and we're so tied to them for consumerism. I mean, we would just be completely demolished if they stopped providing us with, you know, consumer goods. So like, why on earth would we like piss off China just for no reason? I mean, the only thing people say is the chips, you know, the silicon chips that are made in Taiwan and stuff. But there's so many peaceful, you know, ways to like do these trade deals that don't involve you being like, F you, China, come and hit us, because that's World War III. And I don't think we want to start it. I think if there's World War III, we want to finish it. We don't want to be the ones starting it. Like, I don't think that that's a good move for the U.S., you know, or anyone.
Well, I agree with you. I don't think it is, but I think the problem is we always end up with maverick generals on the US side of things. I mean, when you think back to history and things like the Korean War, when MacArthur decides he knew best what to do and decides he's going to invade, he's going to invade China. And luckily Truman stopped him and fired them. But if he hadn't stood down, would he have carried, you know, that military might into China, provoked a major war, and we'd ended up fighting China? And
yeah,
I mean, Petraeus, I think, was a similar kind of situation. So there are these, and Ukraine seems to have had its own recently with Zelensky, you know, because I believe Zelensky told him to stand down, and he initially said no. And I don't think the military would have made him stand down. So that was close to a coup about to happen there. And now they've put this other guy, this butcher, in charge, and things don't appear to be going well on that side of things. But
well, things aren't going well, that's for sure. I that's why I don't think escalating is a good plan. But you could be right. I mean, I hope it doesn't go that way. I hope that, you know, we're good with all the conflicts we got going on right now.
Well,
we don't really need to add, you know, anything else to the mix. I think it's complicated enough. But yeah, that would certainly be World War III. I mean, so I think that's the tension point, right?
Yeah,
the tension point, I think, is China at this point, and possibly Taiwan, or maybe it's just the China-Russia, you know, alliance. Maybe that, I mean, that's definitely part of it. And you know, the tension with
the other one is Iran, because, you know,
that's always a thing. Yeah, Iran is,
So the US made a big thing about, you know, punishing Iran for some of the stuff that's been going on in the Red Sea, and then promptly went and bombed Syria. You know, because I think they understand if they bomb Iran, you're going to end up with either China or Russia back in there as well.
Oh yeah, that would be it. I mean, you don't want conflict with Iran. That's definitely always been a thing that we're trying to avoid. You know, and that's why we've set up you know, shop as they speak in so many spots in the Middle East. Not only just the oil, but a lot of it is the military strategy to have bases, you know, in these countries. You know, that's why we've been fighting and having those, you know, bases set up in Iraq, and you know, obviously Israel's ally, and you know, we're supporting them. And it's, you know, it comes down to wanting to have that strategic position, I think, in the Middle East, you know, as well as money obviously is always a factor, but you know, ensuring that you keep that money and you keep that oil and you keep the interests, you know, alive. And avoiding conflict with Iran is something I hope that we can manage to do. But that's another looming threat. That's also, you know, very, very strong tension point.
Yeah, I would hope so too, because we really don't want to see it kicking off down there. I mean, we've already got Iraq and Syria. Both have said to America, you need to leave the country. And America hasn't. So effectively the US is illegally occupying those two countries. And even better is when you find out, which was released recently to the Turkish public, that the US are pumping oil out of Syria and selling it to Turkey.
Wow.
who are then shipping it to Israel? You can't make this up. The whole thing's mental. So
no, yeah, it is. Sometimes you have to detach, because it is mental. It'll drive you crazy.
I don't think there's anywhere else in the world left to look at. If we've pretty much covered it at the moment, haven't we, Heidi?
I think so.
Yeah. I'd like to thank you for coming on, because I've had a great conversation.
Yeah, it's been awesome. Thanks for, you know, being flexible and, you know, having the conversation today. I appreciate, you know, your time. It's been great.
Yeah. Great. Thanks very much. Is there anything you want to plug before you go? Your Substack or your...
Yeah, just please follow me on X, you know, formerly known as Twitter. It's Heidi Briones, just my name. You can find me there. You can find me on my Substack is HeidiBriones.com. You know, keep up with me there. That's all I have to plug at this time. But yeah, it's been great.
Right. Excellent. Thanks very much.
Cause I don't give a fuck what you say. Yeah, I'ma do shit my way. So you can go kick rocks, I'ma stack bricks up, build what I want to make. Yo, I got a lot of shit to say, so I'ma do this every day. I'll be writing things until I'm fucking buried in my grave. 6 feet deep under, but my body won't decay. Cause my messages are timeless, so they'll put them on display. Oh yeah, I rap with a certainty, I have a sense of urgency. A message for eternity, for everyone internally. I had some people burning me, but now they fucking learn to see I ain't the one to fuck with. Now they looking nervously, and I don't really care what you think of me, respect go kick rocks, I'ma stack bricks up, build what I want to make. Cause I don't give a fuck what you say, yeah, I'ma do shit my way. So you can go kick rocks, I'ma stack bricks up, build what I want to make. Yeah, I'ma do it my way.
Can't contain it, I'm coming out with a statement. You really changed, man, all your music and arrangement. You don't know shit, shut your mouth, you can save it. I'm the same dude that got his come up from the basement. 100 songs, 100 weeks, didn't change it. Experiments, development, intelligence, and patience. I'll do it all again, cause I never feel complacent. Let's keep the good vibes, positivity's contagious. I'm never looking back, cause I made a life that's passionate. A college graduate suppressing all his talents, yeah. He found a way to go and change, become an advocate. For taking control of your life, go out and battle. And you think you have a dream, then act on it. Get after it, get out your head and fucking capture it. You got one life to master it. Don't give up on your future, we all start losers. We're all late bloomers, gotta struggle through the sewer.
What you say, yeah, I'ma do shit my way. So you can go kick rocks, I'ma stack bricks up, build what I want to make. Cause I don't give a fuck what you say, yeah, I'ma do shit my